Well, hello. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, NoleFam, to another episode of Novak Weekly Podcast. I'm your host, Marko Milenković, and joining me, as he does always, is my good friend from Italy, Mario Boccardi. Hey, buddy, how's it going?
Hi, everything is quite fine, and yeah, happy to be here for another episode. Hopefully, it will be as good as the previous one, but I'm sure it will.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. We got a very interesting one for you today, where we'll talk about Serbian Davis Cup, Rafa Nadal's interview, a little bit of Laver Cup, and of course, we'll ask our guest some questions, mostly about his career in journalism and broadcasting, many interviews he did with Novak Djokovic, and the story behind Novak Books. So, without further ado, let me welcome for the first time ever on this pod, Mr. Tony Dosen. Welcome, Tony, and thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
I'm glad I'm here.
Great. Before we actually go into this, I'll ask you guys please to like this video, share it, or leave your comments and feedbacks down below. Also, do not forget to subscribe and turn that notification bell on. That's basically the simplest way of supporting us in our work. So thank you guys. And now let's do this. Tony, I know who you are. I hope Mario knows who you are, but there are a lot of people who actually don't. So I would like for you to introduce yourself a little bit, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think the part of my tennis background is something that probably interests more people than another part. So I've been in tennis in a different capacity for almost 30 years. So I don't even know if you guys were born when I was.
Come on, 30 years. You haven't told me that.
Yeah.
30
so
years.
I think the Davis Cup back in Budva, at the time that was Yugoslavia. It was 1995 when I had been, at the time I was in an advertising and a marketing. So I was in a capacity of a sponsorship on behalf of tennis Yugoslavia at the time. So I've been in a tennis probably about 30 years. So I don't know about you guys, but I don't even know if you were born there. However, something that probably interests people a little bit more, I was fortunate enough to be part of a tennis circus for the last 15 years, which I would even describe as a golden age of tennis. Again, in a different capacity, all the way from a marketing and a sponsorship to working with some of the ATP media TV broadcasters. I've been doing this on behalf of the Serbian Television Sport Club, working with the Eurosport and some other organizations. So long story short, I probably did about dozens of interviews with Novak in a capacity of a TV broadcasters, mostly live after the match or post-match exclusive interviews. I can go on my YouTube. I have a pretty good collection there. But I have also interviewed John McEnroe. I interview Matt Wilander. One of my favorite interviews is with Peter Bodov, who is working with I believe, ESPN for now. So I've been in a tennis for the last 15 years. Full disclosure, this is not my full-time job. This is more like a passion. And this is more like, I wouldn't call it hobby because, so I've been at least at a 50, 60 tournaments at least.
Amazing.
Most recently, the last tournament I covered with the sport club was at the Wimbledon. I was there for 15 days from the end to the... And most recently, I did publish the books that you have been talking about Novak careers. That was kind of something that it's probably something that's most interesting for people that are listening to this.
Yeah, it'll probably be your biggest legacy when it comes to your Novak career, your Novak path. Let's say it like that.
True.
But we'll of course talk about that in details later on. I wanted to ask you, how did you enter that world of tennis media broadcasting, and what are the differences in your experience between, as you said, marketing, advertising, and that part, and reporting and broadcasting it?
It's a pretty good question. I've been mostly, again, in a capacity of a sponsors. I was like in the marketing. At the time, that was Tennis Associations of Serbia through some family connections and things like that. And then I discovered something that there is a lot of international tournaments that do not have a lot of journalists from Serbia. Specifically, we are talking about a regular media, but we're talking about TV broadcasters.
Okay.
So I just get in touch with the people from Serbian televisions, and I was like, I can do a couple of interviews. And then the funny thing is, my first live interview was with number one tennis player in the world after the match. The way it works, for people who are not familiar with the media, if you're TV broadcasters from the country where the player is playing, after the match, you are pretty much first in line to do an interview with the tennis player. So in some cases, when I did a live from US Open in 15, 18, I would have a ESPN and everybody else behind me. But that's how I started, going back to your question. So that's how I started. I started doing the interviews. Then I started doing this for Croatian media. So I did a Borna Čorić, Cilic, everybody. Then I started doing doubles. And I started doing a lot of interviews, more than 100. And then when you are under the tournament, of course, if you come across John McEnroe or Mats Wilander or Petra or anybody, you do an interview. And that's how I kind of started using the backdoor. And again, full disclosure, this is not my full-time job. However, it's a passion that I turned into the hobby, that I turned into the part-time job, that I turned into the publishing business. So this is how I entered. And again, I do have a YouTube channel. I did this just for the reason of aggregating all these interviews, but there is like hundreds of interviews, 100 plus interviews there, I believe. But this is how I entered this tennis world.
Do you have any older videos, Tony? Because the last time I checked, I think the oldest on YouTube is from US Open 2015 or something like that.
Yeah, I do have, I think 13 and 14 is the year when I started sending videos. This is what I considered a golden decade of tennis, by the way, because Nadal was at the peak, Federer was at the peak, Novak was coming and taking over. So no, like I think it's a 13 when I started with the videos. Like before that, I was in a capacity of a sponsor, visiting, getting tickets, going and looking this from kind of a back end perspective.
Yeah, it seems like Mario has some technical difficulties.
I hope he was not bored with our discussion.
Yeah, I definitely think he wasn't. I'm just gonna send him a message to see if everything is okay. I mean, the connection probably is the biggest issue. We had those things in the past, but before that, and while we wait for Mario hopefully to rejoin us, okay, here he is, I think.
Yeah,
Mario,
guys,
you good?
yes. A sudden thunderstorm made the Wi-Fi break, and I had to change the connection to my phone. That's been the issue, but it's everything okay.
Okay, great. Hopefully it'll stay like that. Tony, I wanted to ask you another question about how the media actually works, because you're the first journalist, or even if you don't consider yourself a journalist, the first guy who actually done those things. Can you give us some technical stuff about how does ATP media or tennis media in general works on the actual tournaments, and what's the difference between ATP Tour and Grand Slams?
Yeah, first you have two types of media, which I kind of discovered back in the day. I did start before television. I was actually covering this for some news agencies here. And then usually you only have an access to the press conference where they bring the players, you can ask the questions and things like that. Then you have official TV broadcasters who are more engaged with the players, have access to interviews, not only from the country where you're from, but after the match. Like if I put myself in a Novak shoes, he'll do an interview on court. Sometimes I will be on court as well and do an interview with him. Then after that, usually he goes to the press center where he can ask for, and then there is an additional media, probably 4 to 5 different broadcasters. Everybody have only 2 questions sometimes even 1. I did interviews when I'm limited only to 1 question. And going back to your question about ATP media covers, for example, ATP 1000, ATP 500, 250, and they have, I believe, 164 countries that are broadcasting 1,000 tournaments. Grand Slams are different beast. ATP is there. I know people from ATP, so they're always there helping, escorting players and things like that. But technically, AT Media does not have broadcasting rights for some of the Grand Slams. And that's the reason why in Serbia, for example, mostly Grand Slams are either with the Eurosport, who covers, I believe, Paris and New York. And then you have a sports club who is a Wimbledon for the last 10 plus years, and then Australia, which I don't even know, quite frankly, where it is. So AT Media is mostly covering ATP 1000, 250 all the way to you have a Grand Slams, which are different sponsorship and broadcasting arrangements. And from the perspective of us as a media, if you go to cover for the newspaper or blog, you usually do not have that much of an access of the top players, especially in a later stage, other when you go to the press conference. If you are a broadcaster, you literally have in your contract, that they have to give you the players if you're coming from this country. You, even in the final, we did an Alcaraz in the Wimbledon final, and things like that. So that's kind of two different things, the regular media and broadcasters and ATP and the Grand Slams. They're kind of part of the same coin, but different.
But what do you think that it can work better if there's something to make tennis even more, accessible and enjoyable for the general public?
It's a big topic, and it's a great question. I live in North America, so I can talk from the perspective of somebody who is consuming sports in North America. And I can see that similar it's in the rest of the world. But the reason why they build a roof at a U.S. Open is because most of the time the final of a Grand Slam was pushed into the Monday, and Monday is a Monday night football, and then football will cover this. They will not have a coverage. So going back to your question, the problem with the tennis is that unless it's a Grand Slam and unless it's a 1000, it doesn't end up in a prime time television. And then if you are just consuming sports, you have 4 or 5 major sports, and then tennis is a little bit. So the question you have asked, what can be done? It's definitely to have a more media exposure, because more media exposure means more money, more sponsors, more everything. So a lot of times, specifically in North America, tennis is covered by some other bigger events, other than maybe Wimbledon final. Even when you go to the 1000 tournaments, you can see that, for example, big media is coming just for a semifinal and a final. So I'm absolutely 100% sure that if you have a more TV broadcasting rights in a primetime television, then more people watch tennis. But when we talk about general public, most of the people watch Grand Slam finals, some 1000 finals, if they are, for example, in Paris or Madrid or Rome. And I think that's the biggest problem right now, why tennis cannot have is not more popular, because it is just in the shadows of like football, baseball, basketball, soccer, whatever you call it. But every time when it's on TV, they have a very impressive ratings. Like Wimbledon final is at the same level globally almost as a Super Bowl. So when it's on TV, people decide and they like watching tennis. But a lot of times, other than sports enthusiasts like ourselves, it's not in a prime time. You have to have a special cable. You have to have a special to buy tennis TV subscription. You have to, in order to, for example, follow the whole season.
Go
on, Mario.
Okay, sorry. I can totally understand. For example, in Italy, it's a little bit different because basically all the main tour is available on the public TV, both the ATP and the WTA, or even with pay TV, but not just for tennis. So it's way more accessible, I have to say, in talking about this. But at the same time, we have sometimes the issue that when the sport becomes even more accessible. A lot of even, let's say, about I don't like this word, but let's say casual fans are getting into that, watching just some matches and coming into the world and commenting. There are also some issues with the hardcore and the old tennis fans, which get a little bit annoyed about that. And I don't know if it's just a thing about tennis, or it's something that regards just even the other sports. But in tennis, I feel that it's not that easy to make the new fans agree and to get in the same way as, let's say, the old fans and people who are watching tennis for the most traditional reasons. Let's say about that.
But I think that's natural. Honestly, that applies to every sport in general today. I remember last year I watched a analysis on YouTube, a YouTube video about how TikTok is basically destroying sports because kids don't have that big of an attention span like even we did, let alone older generations.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. You actually highlighted a lot of important point. I'm glad to learn also a little bit more how it's in Italy, that it's available for all the tournaments. But I think another thing, and it's similar in, like, for example, volleyball, which is a very popular sport, is unpredictability. You can go and sit and watch for 15 minutes and it's going to be 2-0. And then you can sit and watch like 4 or 5 hours. So in the new days of it, we talk about social media, about the attention span, about everything. And then you have this global aspect as well. I actually been on almost all US Open since 2007. And it's the first time I'm in Europe this year watching US Open. And I'm like, God, this is like 2:00 in the morning and I'm watching tennis. Or when I'm in North America and you watch an Australia final starts at 3:00 in the morning in North America, or West Coast difference. I'm not even sure if it's 12. It is a global sport, so there is a lot of factors that you have highlighted. I just highlighted the dimension of the media because I'm kind of looking this from the inside. And ATP is afraid, I would say, that with 3 big players going out, there will be a gap in media. Let's be quite honest. If it's a final that Novak Federer, that's one types of audience. If you have a Nishikori against Cilic, it's a different types of audience. So there's a lot of dimensions to these questions that you have asked, and it involves this unpredictability. It involves, but I would still say that I was actually looking at the Sun TV ratings. Wimbledon is one of the top most watched events in the world, in the same level with almost like Super Bowl in North America or a World Cup. So what I'm trying to say is, if media is supporting this a little bit more, if you have a larger broadcasters, Novak is doing some things also to bring their ATPs doing this next gen things, to bring this to the TikTok generation as well. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to those events. They have DJs, they have a different points count. There's more predictability about how long is the match. There is a lot of different things that they're mixing, but they don't want to alienate an old fans like myself, who is just, I go back to John McEnroe and, Mats Wilander and Björn Borg and Connors, who are the core base. Let's be quite honest. If you look at the age group of people watching tennis, that's pretty high, actually.
Just to add to your comments about ratings and everything else, especially about around Wimbledon. I mean, this year's final between Novak and Carlos were watched by 11.3 million people on BBC alone. So that's just UK ratings. So as you probably said, in terms of global audience, it's probably around Super Bowl, maybe even higher numbers, and that's just one tournament, that's just one final. But what else I wanted to ask you, Tony, and when you mentioned how the media part, especially in North America and especially the US, how because you've been attending, dozens of Grand Slams, and you interacted with media from Serbia, Europe, and all over the world. What's the difference between their approach, and how does basically European media compares to US media in their approach to tournaments and Grand Slams, and basically, promoting the event?
It's again excellent question, and if I'm about to compare it without stereotyping, which is impossible, I think European media, for me at least, it's more diverse, more interesting, more you have all kind of angles depending on which nations you're coming from. If you're looking at the North American media, you almost have a monopoly of few people, few TV channels, few Twitter experts who are almost controlling the narrative about tennis. And I think that's, and also Europe and other ones are looking at this as we're talking about popularity of a Novak, but we're looking at the popularity of a Novak in North America, or, in the major Western countries, for example. And because the North American media is controlling the narrative in a lot of different ways, then you don't see like how Novak is hugely popular in India, in South America, in China.
Yeah.
I've been at the tournaments where 2018 Cincinnati, when Novak spent and it's on my YouTube channel, Novak spent 54 minutes giving autograms
I watched
to
it.
Crazy crowd. And people loves him, but then because of the controversies around, and we all know what happened in Australia and US Open, I don't even want to go there. You have this idea, but they don't, they're not supporting. True, but we are looking a small media segment. And I've been to tournaments, I've been around the world. I don't think that, and maybe I'm biased, I am. When you look at the tournament, when you look at the fans, and you look this year in Cincinnati, like there was more people watching Novak practice than the semifinal that Novak didn't play. So going back to your question about, there is a difference. I like more European media. I like, even when we go to the Wimbledon, we have a French TV coming us, Italian TV, and Novak, and German TV, and and Novak is amazing for talking in different languages around different subjects, but and then you look at the North, it's just a couple of, John McEnroe, for example, and he's an excellent guy, is the media icon.
Yeah, I love him.
And you go to US Open, you have actual earphones listening, because people cannot watch tennis without John McEnroe in there. So I like the way the European medias, because it's coming from Mario was saying how it's in Italy, and Germany is different, in France, and then I talk to them. And I think personally that European tennis journalists are bringing high level of expertise, other than, of course, John McEnroe or some other thing, even on a level of different blogs and things. There is incredible knowledge about tennis that comes from European media.
Yeah, let me ask you the same question, but from a fan perspective, because I think that, we all know which sports dominate the US. Football or NFL is the king over there, followed by all the other major leagues, NBA, MLB, NHL, even MLS right now. We've seen the incredible rise of the UFC and things like that. WWE, even though it's not technically a sport, it's more of an entertainment product, is massive over there. So tennis kind of falls behind. While over here in Europe, even though our football is king, and basketball is popular, handball in some parts of the world, some parts of Europe, ice hockey as well. But I think that none of those sports, you mentioned volleyball as well, but none of those sports have the star power of tennis, European tennis, especially. How no matter how much we love Tijana Bošković or some handball guy, Nikola Karabatic, they can't compare to Rafa, Novak. They can't even compare to Stan Wawrinka in terms of international star power. So what do you think the difference is there between fans in Europe and US and Canada?
But you actually almost gave an answer to this question, because you have those 4 major sports and they cover 95% of. I'll give you an interesting example. My daughter plays rugby, and she cannot watch rugby. Yeah, she played even on a pretty high level, but this is a different topic. But she cannot watch rugby, not a football. I'm talking about rugby. Yeah. She cannot watch this on the TV in North America. But then she turned on a sports club who covers like a junior championship of rugby's World Cup. So she needs to watch the Serbian television in order to watch sports that it's not dominated in the media there. So going back to your question, I think, again, that Europeans are more diverse. That's why you have a volleyball with 60,000 people. That's why you have tennis with an extreme popularity. But in North America, most of the people, quite frankly, watch Wimbledon, US Open, Paris final, Australia, and then because that's when it's on TV, I like European media way more. I think they're dedicating more time and broadcasting capacity to racing, to track and field. You don't even watch in North America unless it's Olympics.
Not even the championships.
No, barely ever. And by that I mean something that people consume this, which is either primetime television or it's available through some of the online channels. So if you look at the TV ratings, Olympics, everybody watch, and then 4 years, nothing. You have the brilliant track and field, as we all know. In Europe, not really covered there. You have a volleyball that, for example, Canada is always in top 5, top 10. They barely ever end up on a primetime televisions in a prime spot. So again, going back to your question, I do believe that there is a monopoly of a 4 major sports, which is dictated by the biggest sponsors, and then all other. Of course, the situations right now with the YouTube and live streaming, and it helps because you can stream the matches, but I don't think the numbers come anywhere close to this. But when I come here to Europe, even when I turn TV here in Serbia, I have like 15 different sports I can watch at any time almost. I have access to all different sports, including tennis. And another thing, as we all know, when you have a Wimbledon, for example, on TSN or ESPN, they have 15 channels dedicated. You have every single or 10 channels or 5 in the last week. But that's only Wimbledon or that's only US Open.
But here, for example, it depends a lot on the nationality of the player involved, because, for example, tennis right now here is super popular, and I would say even, let's say, quite close to football, even if it's not that close, but way closer than in the past, because of the success that the Italian players, especially on the men's side, are getting. For example, here the Berrettini-Djokovic final in Wimbledon has doubled the audience for any Big Three finals, Grand Slam finals played among the 2 of the Big Three members. Even the here the public is a lot involved in the country getting success in the sport, and even the public TV, when there's an Italian in a big final, there is we have the federational channel, which is available for everyone on the TV, which is all 100% about tennis. But when there is, for example, an Italian in a big final, and suddenly it is showed by 4, 5, 6 different channels all in once, all together, because here it works a little bit like that. And I feel that people need that kind of story involving the own country trying to get success, especially if it's over a great champion like Djokovic. This is the narrative that makes people go crazy. For example, an Italian in the Wimbledon final facing Novak Djokovic, and the people go crazy here for that kind of narrative.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. But just to show you something completely different, technically, I've been even in London, and when Federer is playing in U.S. players, and everybody goes for Federer. Imagining Belgrade, Novak is playing against whoever, or in Italy, Berrettini is playing, or some of the local, and then 90% of the people. So your point, it's an excellent point. It is connected to the national pride, to the way we are consuming sports on an international level. There is more passion. I was talking just to somebody yesterday who was at the Davis Cup match in Split. They had 400 people coming, and now pardon my North American ignorance, I don't know if it's a Finland or Norway, but you have like fans coming. There is more passion, as you have pointed out, in regards to the success of Italian player, or success of a Davis Cup team. We all know how Davis Cup in Serbia back in 2010, when Novak won, was a huge thing. In North America, not really. If they like, I've been in Miami when U.S. players playing against Nadal, and you have a lot of Latino community there, and they're all for Nadal. Just imagine Berrettini is playing against, I don't know who we want to use as an example, and nobody's for Berrettini. It's impossible. So yes, Europe brings passion. Europe brings. And I think from higher exposure to tennis, there is more knowledgeable fans, more knowledgeable people in the media. They understand a little bit better than the groups that is just watching finals of Wimbledon and U.S. Open.
Yeah, even in my opinion, it's also how, for example, media here decided to sell this sport. For me, it's like, given also that the federation controls a lot the way media are talking about tennis here. They have decided, and they have success so far in terms of numbers. So even if I don't particularly like this, because I'm not following the sport and making all these links to the nationality of the player and all this stuff, but here I feel like they have decided to sell tennis like this, in which the national team, even in the individual event, you still get that narrative that there is the national team trying to, with all his players, trying to get success in a tournament, in a Grand Slam, and all this. And people are I feel that they are getting into that. But there's also a lot of question, because, for example, I am a little bit distant to this way of telling this sport, but
But it's an excellent point again. But another problem in North America is that the last time U.S. player won U.S. Open, for example, I think it was Andy Roddick about 20 years ago.
Yeah, 2003. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another thing. This year, but this is absolutely crazy. And I did talk a lot with a lot of people from United States tennis associations. You should see the United States Tennis Association camp. What
In
kind
Florida,
of logistics they'd have, the practicing court support. And this year, let's give them some credit. There was a couple of players who, went all the way to the semifinal, to the quarterfinal. It was the first time in about 30 years that they had 2 players in the quarterfinals. But the problem is, again, as you were saying, there was Berrettini in the final, and then the whole Italy was watching. But the problem in North America was that after Andy Roddick, who was the last player who won, U.S. Open, you don't have this level of success. And there's all kinds of things. You actually touch on a couple of this. Like, I personally believe one of the reasons why Novak was engaging with Boris Becker, for example, was to broaden his audience, because people were watching Novak because Boris Becker is in a corner. People from Germany, for example. So there is a lot of national pride involved in watching tennis. So if you have a Boris Becker as a coach, or you have a Berrettini in a final, or you have a success of a player from Scandinavia, the TV ratings will just jump through the roof.
Yeah. What do you think the future of sports, of tennis media is? Because especially during this US Open, I was following some tennis podcasts, tennis, YouTubers who have a very large audiences. I'm talking tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people who said that they couldn't get a media accreditation, while some smaller blogs or things like that do. So the conclusion is that tennis in general still prefers, old traditional print or blog or basically written work over audio and video. So what do you think?
Or books.
Yeah, or books. Do you think that'll change in the near future?
I don't think so. And
really,
I can go back to, for example, ATP Miami 1000, 2013 and 2023. You have less journalists at the site. You don't have, for example, we used to fight to put cameras in the back, like TV broadcasters. You don't have people putting cameras anymore because you have to actually plug an audio. The numbers of press conferences is, I would say, 70%, 80% lower. You used to have actually every player go to the press conference, even win or lose, they'll go to the press conference. Now you only have the top. I don't even want to go into the the whole thing when almost AI is replacing people with the cameras, or Hawkeyes is replacing the linesmen or something like this. But specifically about your question about media, I see less media involved on site. Everything is streamed, condensed, aggregated, delivered. That's why they don't have an incentive to have more people on site, because when you are in US Open, for example, you have $25 a day meals. Multiply this with the 15 days and a couple of hundred, you see the huge cost for the people who are organizing this. So it's about money as well. It's about cutting costs. Then you provide them with some discounts for hotels and things like that. So we're talking for a US Open. I can tell you that they spend millions of dollars to bring, and the US Open is pretty good. They're still inviting people. I think there is like 5-6 from Serbia, for example, who goes there every year. But your question about a future of the media, I'm afraid that it will be the trend of reducing number of media present at the site will even increase. I do believe that everything is going to be streamed, condensed, online, and I think, but that's an opportunity in a way. That's an opportunity for people like you and other people who are bringing passion and knowledge to this sport to occupy some other media channels and bring some perspective, because people are hungry for these types of information. I also talk with the photojournalists. You used to have on both sides of a tennis court like dozens, in the finals even 100 of like photographers. Now there is only selected few. They even changing the basically where you used to have a photographers in Miami, you have a VIP seats right now that they're selling in Toronto as well. You used to have a journalist on both sides, for example, and then there. So I think that, and then the cost of traveling is increasing. The budget that media house have for sending people outside is reduced. So I did talk with a lot of media people complaining that they sometimes, I know a lot of journalists who are paying from their pocket to go there and cover.
Yeah,
I know a lot of journalists who are finding their own sponsors to cover that. And I'm even talking about some big, either broadcasters or even in North America. So I don't know. I have noticed a trend in the last 10 years that there is a less and less media present at those events.
What would you say is the best tournament in terms of organization or experience for both media members and fans?
I do still believe that, for example, tournaments with a very long tradition, like a Wimbledon, US Open, Paris, Full disclosure, I've never been to Australia. You and I talked about that.
Yeah.
And
we'll
then
change that next year.
yeah, we'll fix that. But then, Mario, pardon for me for saying this. For example, the ATP final was moved from London to Torino for the last two. Now it's a third year. So they had a lot of problems in the first year. It's a first-time tournament. It's a first-time venue. So it takes years and years for the tournaments and all the aspects of a tournament, which media is just a small part for everything, because they get better. Like, I've been to Torino the year after. The first one was horrible. We were waiting 3 hours for credentials. Our microphone didn't work in like million different problems. So going back to your question, like Wimbledon, and I've been this year for full 15 days. Like, you can see that they've been doing this for 100 years. You can like it. They have this curfew. They have those ridiculous things. We're interviewing Novak at 12:05 after midnight, and there is an announcement: please leave the premise. There is a curfew. Like what? However, you can see that there are tournaments. Then there are other aspects. Miami used to be in a Key Biscayne, which is an old, and then they moved this to the football court. Literally,
Yeah,
it's a
I know.
football.
And there's also a Formula One circuit over there.
And then for the first year when I was there, nothing worked. You are pressed and you have to walk, like similar to London ATP. You have to walk like 20 minutes to go from, because it's a football court and it's a huge, and they have just little corner. So yes, I do believe that it has to do with the fact how long the specific tournaments have been taking place. And I'm glad to see that Italy with the ATP final are huge. It's getting better and better. So I can reassure in 5 years it's going to be excellent. But the first year was disaster.
What about Rome? If we're talking about Italy,
Rome has a better tradition, beautiful venue, everything there. I love this court that you have. I feel it's technically in a hole. It has this kind of feeling similar to, by the way, Maracana in Belgrade, which you have a feel you go inside. So yeah, but again, it comes with the tradition that comes from Italian passion for tennis, and this is the venue that has a tradition. I'll have to grab my book to tell you how many years, but dozens of years of high level tournaments. And you can see that everywhere. You can see it from the media, from the restaurant, like from everything. They've been doing this for 30 years, and they're getting better every year.
Yeah, Mario, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you if you have a take about the issue regarding the night session in tennis, both from the perspective of the players, the fans on the site, the fans at home, the media, the television broadcaster. I feel that it's super, super difficult to find a right solution. But what's your take on that?
I'll give you an interesting example. I've seen pretty much like hundreds of sessions at a US Open. So here's the thing that maybe people don't know. The night session in US Open, if there is a first female match, can start 10, 11, and then go into 1. And because they serve alcohol, by the way, and then they let a lot of fans from the top coming down, just that for TV it doesn't look empty, because a lot of expensive seats, they take pictures for Instagram and leave. It doesn't matter, the seat is like $5,000 a single seat. So night sessions at US Open can go crazy. You have people heckling, people drunk, people. However, it is a special thing. I've been to a lot of night sessions at least 10 tournaments. If it's a Saturday, if it's a weekend, if it's a US Open, if it's a big match, it's crazy. I don't even want to start naming the night sessions that Novak played all the way with the Del Potro in 2012, or those night sessions can be fantastic. US Open is specifically, I think, because Paris didn't have a lights until recently. Wimbledon didn't have a roof until recently. Or curfew. And things like that. For me, night sessions in North America are pretty special. Cincinnati has a beautiful night sessions. Canada, both Montreal and Toronto, had some amazing night sessions. However, you end up with some technical difficulties because they serve alcohol. People are a little bit more relaxed. They start swearing, yelling. So I've been in a couple of matches that Novak was playing, and they were even like the big semifinals with Nadal. I'll tell you, 2010. It was unbelievable. They were heckling Novak when he was serving. Novak was agitated. So those night sessions that you're talking about are kind of a special things. You don't have this kind of an atmosphere at 11 o'clock a.m. when somebody's playing like a night sessions.
What's the latest you ever left the premises? US
Oh my
Open,
God, a few
especially.
times this year in Wimbledon on few occasions because we have to wait for Novak to come and do an interview. We probably left, and Wimbledon is specific because they have a curfew that starts. I've been in Miami until 2 o'clock in the morning. I've been in the US Open pretty much 1:30, 2 o'clock. I don't even remember. So I've been at some very, very late sessions. And one that I particularly remember was Isner Raonic, 3 tie breaks. You're just waiting for a tie break because nobody's going to break anybody. That one ended up, I believe, I was with in his box around 1:30 or something. They're special. There is something special about night sessions.
Yeah, let me ask you a couple of quick questions, and then we'll move to a different topic, which will be Novak Books, first of all. So first question, your first ever tennis experience in terms of being a reporter and things like that.
Oh, reporter was not that long ago. I was pulling out John McEnroe against Bjorn Borg, Wimbledon 1976 or something. My first experience as a reporter or TV broadcaster started about 12, 13. And then big time, these interviews. Yeah, 13. I think if you go on my YouTube, I didn't upload everything, but it starts like 13, 14, 15, and then it goes. I didn't put everything. But yes, quick answer to your questions, 2013.
Your first ever Novak experience?
One-on-one, my first interview with him was in Canada in 2012.
Okay. Favorite Novak interview?
I have to give some credit to Julie.
Okay.
We were in Miami. We were in Miami in 2021 or 2. When we were invited close to Novak premise to talk about books, to discuss everything. And then she did an interview. I think it's a 19-minute interview. I think she has a special energy with him. Novak was very relaxed. The questions were good. She structured this in 7 different questions that was able to pull out of Novak even some nice emotions and things like that. So definitely this interview, which, by the way, my idea was, because this book is from the fans, for the fans, was that, I did a lot of interviews. You have an excellent interviews from people from Sport Club, from Višković, from Boccardi, and other ones, mostly in Serbian. But that was probably the best interview, yeah.
Give me your 3 all-time favorite Novak victories. Can be whichever match you want. Grand Slam, ATP, Davis Cup, finals, round of 16, whatever.
I'm going to be very subjective on this subject because I would pick the one that I end up interviewing him after. So, and interestingly enough, all of them comes from a US Open. So 2011, first time winning a US Open in a final against Nadal despite the injury. It's very high in my 2015 final with the Federer at the US Open. Which again, Federer was at the top of his game. Novak overcome this, and again, I wish my third favorite match was the final of the Wimbledon of this year, because I was there. It didn't happen, so I cannot include this one. So I would go back to an incredible final that I witnessed and interviewed Novak right after it with Del Potro in New York 2018. Those are from my personal perspective. I was there. I was interviewing him after the match. I was literally sitting on the court, absorbing. Like, I'll never forget in 2015 when Novak cut himself, he fell down and he's picking up a towel next to me where I'm sitting, and he doesn't even know he's bleeding from his knee, from his elbow. So those are kind of personal thing why I really like those 3 US Opens.
Okay, and the last rapid fire question: what's your favorite tournament to attend?
I would say Wimbledon. I would say Wimbledon brings something special. I think I'm not a big fan of a lot of things, the way they're doing stuff. I'm not a big fan of an audience in a Wimbledon final, which is a different beast. Mostly against Novak, as we all know. But Wimbledon has something special, So I would pick up Wimbledon.
Okay. A little boring answer, I have to say. I was expecting to hear Monte Carlo or something like that.
Yeah, true. That would be, by the way, my second best. Monte
Really?
Carlo is a beautiful.
So I was close.
I've been there sometimes with the family members, and it's amazing.
Yeah, Mari, do you have any quick questions for Tony before we move to a different subject?
What about the French Open in terms of I feel that I always had contrasting feelings watching the French Open. So do you have any great memory related to that event?
The thing about the French Open, for everybody who is a Novak fan, we suffer a lot all the way until beating Mare. So it's all subjectives, and I'm really trying to put myself literally like as somebody who is a big fan of Novak Djokovic. So US Open, I've been to not a lot of them, like US Open, which I've been since 2006, technically almost all of them until last couple of years that I missed because of the events. But yes, it brings a lot of nice memory. One is when he lost the final against Nadal, and then the audience gave him a standing ovation for about 3 minutes when Novak was crying. I would need to go back to my memory to pull out that final, which was, I do believe, even 14. But yes, US Open, French Open, beautiful tournament, beautiful venue, nicely organized, long tradition. I'm old enough to remember when Mima Yao, escaped me the last name, played the final there. But in the same time, I have not been at the final when he won. So that's why probably I don't have a lot of memories there.
Mm-hmm.
But a great tournament, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move to our second major subject, and that is, of course, Novak Books. So for our listeners, before Tony actually, gives us the story behind it, Novak Books, for example, I have. You can see it. I have a copy over here. There are 7 books in that set, which basically chronicles every year where Novak finished as the world number 1. You have lots of, basically every tournament, every match, quotes, interviews, stats, achievements, and things like that. You guys can get those books at either novakbooks.com as a 7-book set, which costs $299, so $300, or you can buy each book individually at the cost of $60. And you can also get the same set, but as a yearbook collection and a collectible piece, basically on Novak Djokovic Foundation.org. That one is a little bit more expensive because it's a very special one. I think that Tony has the set behind
Yeah.
him, and you can see it. And of course, all the proceeds go directly to Novak Djokovic Foundation, which basically means that you guys are supporting their work with, kids, schools, kindergartens, and things like that. So I encourage you to purchase at least one of these books if you like Novak. Of course, this is an option for you; it's not an obligation. But I would be very, happy and thankful if you do that. Now, Tony, please give us the story. How did these books come to be? And of course, the same question I asked you last week when we saw each other. Why did you decide to make a book? I mean, the first one came in 2018, I think, or in 2019. It was about Novak's 2018 year-end victory. So please give us the insight.
Yeah, let me backpedal a little bit to the beginning of the story, probably to provide a little bit more context. In 2018 was actually not 1918, just to correct you on this one. It was a very special season in my mind. I was reading yesterday, maybe even on your Instagram, how Novak was this close of actually retiring in 2018. He went all the way to the 27th place in an ATP. I did interview him in Miami, where he lost in the first round in Indian Wells, where he really didn't look well from the perspective of a passion for tennis, injuries, problems with the elbows. So I did even a little documentary for Serbian television about this season. I happened to be on most of the tournaments in this particular season, which is, by the way, very disappointing. You go to Miami, you are hoping you're going to have 7 interviews with Novak, and you only have 1. So I just decided to kind of document this, and it's something also when I had a privilege and to present these books to Novak. I told him I'm an author of the book, but there is not a single sentence in the book from me. So the idea of this book is that I'm not going to tell you about like the question you're asking me right now, what is my opinion? I'll let you go through the specific season and put this in your memory and organize this in the way you believe. So I'm not going to tell you which one.
I'm going to show you instead.
Yeah. So basically I did a 2018. It's almost like I call this contextual aggregation. Everything from this season there was, and why 2018? Because I think it was a huge season for Novak. He went to the 27. He was struggling. He was thinking about retiring. He lost first round of, and then he ended up almost. It's like a movie, like a Hollywood movie. He went down, and then like a phoenix, he went up, won a Wimbledon. I talked to him actually even in Toronto after winning this. Then he went to, I believe, Cincinnati. He won Cincinnati. Then he went and won U.S. Open, all the way to from 27th place in, that was like May, I believe, that he was on a 27th place because he was defending a lot of points, lost a lot of points, thinking about retiring, and then going back and storming through the end of the season. So I did this book, talk with his agent, show him a book. It was limited. I didn't even thought, I was just wanted to document this so that people, but it was very kind of popular book because it was sold in 65 countries. We had 2 editions. And then we were like, why don't we start doing like all the season that he was number 1? So there's a 7th season, hopefully, maybe even this year, we'll see. And then we approached foundations, we donated some books to foundations, and we approached them and start talking with the Novak, how can we make this as a book to support foundations? And this is where we are right now. Long story short, we have 7 books in English. We did 7 books in Serbian. We are planning on doing in Chinese as well. Interestingly enough, most of the people buying books, a regular edition, not a limited editions, are from China. We may do Italian if there is an interest, but we're thinking even about doing per Grand Slams that he won, which would be 24, but the smaller, cheaper pocket little books, so that if I have, as you asked me, the biggest victories, and I gave you something, I would like to have those books. So this is where we are right now, and I think so far the feedback that we received was fantastic. And we're doing this to support some of the programs that Novak Djokovic Foundation does. And this is where we are right now.
So is 2018 your probably most special season regards Novak, or there is something else? Because 2018, you're right when you say that we know that 4 times Novak has won, for example, 3 slams in the same season, and it was not the case that year. But yeah, it felt that from the meaning that year had in the whole, let's say, history, because it had a huge impact in how things progressed then in the next seasons. You made me thinking a lot about how special that year and how important it was. For example, that Wimbledon run, that semi-final. I think it was one of the top Novak victories in terms of the meaning, and also because it was a great quality match. Is this your most special season, or there is another one?
It is. You have pointed all the right reason why it was a special season. And again, in my personal experience, I've been I have an interview with Serbian with him when he lost the first round of Miami, and I asked him which aspects of your game you need to improve, and he even cut me off and said everything. He didn't say a backhand, he didn't say physical, he didn't say this. And then watching this great career going in a direction that he was like literally yesterday, I watched some of the things that he was saying close to retiring, and then coming back as a Phoenix. And I was in Cincinnati. That I believe he played 5 finals in Cincinnati, lost all of them.
Yeah, and then, before winning the first time.
Before winning against Federer 6-4, 6-3. And then just like going Wimbledon, Cincinnati, US Open, Del Potro, I think this is one of the most underestimated finals because Del Potro was at the top of his game. If you remember, in a second set of that match, there was a game that was 20 minutes or something when Novak was literally on the ropes trying to and converting, and then all the way to London final, having this fantastic season and ending up as a number 1. So I don't think, statistically speaking, there is an example of people who was in the mid-season 27 or 26, I don't remember right now, and then winning number 1. So yes, that was a special season. And if you ask Novak, he'll always tell you every season is special, every match is important, but for me, this 18, because I was involved in a lot of tournaments, I was interviewing him after a lot of matches, and I was disappointed. I would go in a tournament and he would, I would go into Miami, book a 10 days hotel, hoping to do 7 interviews with Novak, and he's done in the first round. Literally, so for me, yes, that was a special season.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to ask you is how in the tennis world and media, that start of 2011 with all those victories, the Grand Slam and also the Masters finals, won back-to-back against Rafa Nadal, against Federer in the semis or in the final, all those wins. How was it? How was it felt in that moment, given also what the previous season had been, telling about the 3 players?
Yes, and you are, again, a fantastic question, and I can tell a lot of people are buying single books 2011, and I'll tell you from I've been at the US Open final in 2007 when Novak had actually 3 break points. When he beat him, and I was also in Montreal before that, when he won against number 3, number 2, number 1. So where I'm getting with this is that, and then he won Australia in 2008. But then there is a gap between 2008, and 2011. So if you look at the 2011 season that you're talking about, he was 6-0 against Nadal, mostly in the finals. He was 4-1 against Federer. again, mostly in the finals. He had a 41 winning streak. A lot of people forgot that he lost in Paris against Federer in a semifinal. They didn't play on the main court, but that's a different topic. But he lost. But yes, I'm now looking at the Alcaraz, and it also almost reminds me he won one Grand Slam, and then he started struggling and losing. So it took Novak from a first Grand Slam in 2008 all the way to the 2011 for him to go through this change in his diet, getting rid of some of the health issues that he was exposed to with the breathing and everything. So quite frankly, I did those books behind me, but 11 is the most, 18 is a special season because we were all afraid that this is, you're never going to achieve GOATs, but 11 has a special, that was also very, very special season. And I think a lot of people also recognize that.
Yeah, let's just go back to the books, guy, because we digressed a little bit. I wanted to ask you, where did the idea come from? And I'm asking specifically about the concept, because as you said, this is not a regular book. It's basically like a Novak tennis encyclopedia. So
sure.
How and why did you decide, on this concept?
I'm coming again from a graphic design, from a little bit of advertising business perspective, and looking at this. And I was always actually thinking, I have some seasons in sports, not only tennis. And again, if I start putting 1917 Red Star final of a UEFA Cup, I would even put Nottingham Forest in late 70s. So I do believe that we all have, in the different sports, different seasons that we really remember. 92 basketball, Partizan, Croatia 98 at the World Cup for people in Croatia, or things like that. So the idea was, back in the day, they used to call this type of things almanacs. You buy this per season, but it is, the book idea is, I call this contextual aggregations, and you can do this about tennis player, you can do this about season, and you can do this about tournaments. So for people who went to Miami or New York's Open, you can do that. We did started to talk with UEFA and FIFA, and we were approached by other tennis players. We talked about some big companies who are supporting 7 or 8 players, for example, right now at the tour to do that. But going back to your question, the idea was really at the age when TikTok and instant and people forget and everything is digital, is to bring back this experience of owning a book, having it in your hand, and going through the season, and really kind of, it's almost like cleaning your computer, like, I remember, and going through this and cementing the memory of a specific seasons. Like the reason why I know all this 2011 statistic is that, not only did I actually put it in a book, but I sometimes go, because I'm like, did Troitsky play with him in the first round and struggle? Did he play against, so as you have asked, the idea of this books, again, there is not a single sentence from me. Julie has the whole thing there. People have, like Novak has his thing related to this. I really wanted to pull myself out of an equation and enable fans to enjoy this book from the perspective of somebody don't tell me, just let me, because I have one experience about Berrettini Novak final. Mario has a different experience about this final, as much as I have some bad experience with Novak and Italian players. But let the people go through this, and I really didn't want to be somebody who was explaining, describing, putting my spin to it, and I wanted fans to enjoy this in a format that, quite frankly, was kind of neglected from the perspective of an instant videos, YouTube's, digital, and other formats, which are beautiful, they're nice. But this is a special way to own this book, collect this book, and go through the season. I think it has a very special experience attached to it.
No, it is amazing. I remember the first time I, encountered the
Did
first
they
one
send
you
you
did.
this or you bought it? Like I did give a lot of those 18 books for free.
No, the first one I got, actually, it was a gift from Silvina.
But I gave her a lot of books. I remember that. Yeah.
Probably, but the thing is that she, I think, had a copy at her home in Argentina, so we had to, ask her mom to ship it, and the shipment was very expensive because the whole economic situation in Argentina and conversion between the dollar and the currency they use, so it was a whole mess. But I wanted to buy it for years, but it was only at a certain point in time available on Amazon, and basically the shipment for Serbia was more than the book itself. So I was like, maybe in the future I'll be able to manage to get mine, but now I have them, and thank you, Tony, for that. What else I wanted to ask? Yeah, how long does the process of creating this book last? How long did it take you to get the information to
Yes. So the book was designed by Slavomir Stojanovic Futro. He's one of the best designers in the world. I'm a designer, but I can recognize him as somebody. So that was fantastic. First book was literally myself and him working a couple of nights until 6 o'clock in the morning. So we set up a template, we set up a user flow and everything, and then we listened to the fans, and we actually received some very constructive feedback in a storytelling of the books. So, for example, if you compare your first 2018 book, edition 1, and the latest one, you will see that the opening, we even have all the shirts or kits Novak was using. We have about 8 to 10 different pages summarizing the whole season in some instant slides and things like that. But I would highly recommend you're in touch with Jay. Jay is an incredible, knowledgeable Novak fan. I think he would be great for this podcast. This is the guy who has the largest collection of HD Novak matches. After that, we had to do and replicate this on 7 books. We had to engage people who are so Jay would literally go and say it's impossible that he had a 68% in this match, and there was a mistake on an ATP website. So we would dig deeper the data for this match, and it's 78. So Jay is an incredible guy who helped us put those 7 books. Without him, I don't think I would be able even to do those books. He would be fantastic for your podcast.
He's coming.
Wikipedia of tennis. And going back to your question, then I had to do a team. We had to organize shipping. The biggest problem was I wanted to do everything from Serbia, including shipping. We come across issues in still resolving issue with customs and trying to make sure. So it was a logistic nightmare, but in a retrospect, I was crazy to go into the whole story of trying to do this from Serbia. But yes, we had to have a professional editors, professional designers. We had to engage the best printing company. We had to engage properly with the foundation. We had to organize DHL Express, which, let me say and be really proud, we had a shipping that was delivered to UK in 24 hours. We had a shipping that was DHL Express. God bless them. They gave us incredible rates. So it is a logistic nightmare. We learn a lot from it. We wanted to make sure that everybody who got this book is super happy. So if something was wrong, we would, send it. And the thing can be that you can order books and you have a PO box, but books are big. They are not going there. So here is another set sent on a different address. I gave to Silvina and a lot of NoleFam fans, like dozens of books. Mario, book is coming your way as well. The set of books, give me your address. So yes, it was very hard to organize this from Serbia, but we are trying to engage best printing companies, best designers, best shipping and handling companies, learning from it, improving, making sure we are satisfied, because we're not in this for a short time. We want to be a little unofficial or official technical encyclopedia. I'm sure Novak will publish different books with his experience about this, but this is, as you said, Marko, different types of books, books that enables you to experience this in a way. And one last point I want to make, Novak invests a lot of time and energy in his cognitive capabilities to answer your question properly at the press conference. And when you go through these books and when you read this, unlike any other player that I know of, and I've been to hundreds of press conferences, I'm almost, for the only reason of preserving this journey that Novak had from his perspective, like you can literally pull out an interviews and find a reference that are actually relevant to what's happening right now. So preserving his huge effort in respecting every single media outlet. I've been in Italy, by the way, when he was asked for 2 questions and he would stay 50 minutes, literally 50 minutes for radio in Italy, or and preserving an effort that he invested in dealing with media, dealing with fans, answering the questions at the best of his ability without sugarcoating, telling the way it is. I'm actually very proud that there is a little place that you can go through all this and see how he fell through the journey.
Have there been any, let's say, doubtful moments about, the project of the books? Some, some moments in which, you're telling yourself, oh my God.
Oh yeah, many of them. It's a huge investment. You need to buy the rights for the images, and quite frankly, the whole publishing in this industry is a huge beast. There is an aspect of shipping, handling, customs, sending things. But I think the only way to literally, it's a passion. It does combine, in my particular case, the love for Novak, me being a witness to this incredible careers that he is having, but also coming from a graphic design perspective, still being an old school. I like to feel the book, not watch instant TikTok video. And the only way to preserve all of this is through passions. We had so many setbacks. The big promotion set up in Monte Carlo, Novak is losing first round, everything is canceled. And you go there, spend incredible, but the only reason why, are also people who support this project. The only reason why this book is around, because we have a Jay, who is an incredible contributor. We have a Julie, who is pushing this book. We have a foundation who support us. We have Novak, who really liked the whole idea. We have a whole set of different people coming together. So yeah, of course, it's a little bit uncharted territory. You are going in this annual reports for sports. And the different reason is that other than, of course, you're going to have on social media somebody saying it's too expensive, which is true from the perspective of supporting and giving a portion of this back to the charity. But overwhelmingly, 99.9% of the feedback was, oh, it was worth it. So 65 countries, you learn something every day. And then last point I want to make on this question is that China is, for example, we talk about Novak is popular, but we're looking at the Western world, quite frankly, which is dominating media, Grand Slams and everything. But I've been to tournaments, and the people ordering books and feedback I'm getting, from India, from China, from Brazil, from all over the world, orders from Kazakhstan. We're like, does it even DHL deliver in a lot of beautiful countries in the world that you don't even know that, Novak has a huge fan base. The other day I received the fan club from China, which is huge there again. So yeah, there have been doubts. There have been time when I was thinking I'm going to be, investing a lot of money, and which again, this is not for making, this is putting a little legacy, but it's coming together now. And I like the direction this is going. I think we'll have a Serbian edition, we'll have a Chinese edition, probably other languages, we'll have Grand Slams. So one day when you come to the Novak Museum in Belgrade, you'll exit through the gift shop, as they say.
Yeah.
And you will be able to pick up a little piece, your favorite Grand Slam, your favorite season, your favorite this, or the big thing, you'll have something meaningful and nice to take with you.
Yeah. Before we move to another topic that we have, which is the next one, is the Davis Cup. How long did it take you to finish the first book?
It was about 3 months effort, quite frankly.
Really, just 3 months? Wow.
Just 3 months, because we live in an age where we were able to collect a lot of data easily.
Yeah, that's true.
The biggest issue is buying rights to publish those images, which is the biggest things did we have. And 3 months is the production time, but the whole thing was like 1 year,
Okay.
But I'm talking about, now we're deciding to do this book. So we are already doing, by the way, 2023. We don't want to jinx it, but
No, we're not. We're not gonna do
but
that.
it is an effort. And as I said, we did this, and then we presented this to Novak manager at the time. I think that was in London 2019 that we presented. There was a lot of legal stuff. There's a lot of things. But again, I'm not somebody contributing as an author and writing things. It's collecting, and we wanted to make this really, like, as I was saying, storytelling. So you open a book, you see all the tournaments, you see all the biggest highlights, you see all the kits. Then you can go and absorb each tournament. You learn about history of these tournaments. For example, I was shocked like how old Cincinnati is and things like that. But again, huge credit to Jay. Once we have established so-called design style and design system, and we established the content flow, it was about collecting this. In a first book, for example, there is a couple of spelling errors literally picked up from an ATP source that we had to correct in a second one. But yes, it was about 3 months.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk a little bit about Davis Cup, guys. So as you know, it was not last week, 2 weeks ago, that the world groups were the matches were played and concluded. Serbia will go to Malaga and face Great Britain in the quarterfinals. But I wanted to hear your perspective about this new Davis Cup, which is not that new. I mean, the new format was established in 2019, if I'm correct.
Mhm.
And we've seen a lot of controversy and controversial opinions. The last one, the last big guy who said publicly that he had issues was Tim Wawrinka in Manchester 2 weeks ago. So what do you think of the new format, and what do you think the future of the Davis Cup looks like? Mario, let's start with you.
Okay. Let's say that my opinion is that the old format was great for some things, but had become not really sustainable, in my opinion, especially for the very top players. It was really difficult to manage to get there with their schedule. Also the weekend, the long weekend with the best of 5 matches, it was a little bit unsustainable, in my opinion. And in fact, we'd also seen, for example, cases in which winning one Davis Cup title was a goal for the top players, but after that they kind of needed to rest. For example, the following year, planning a different schedule, probably without going to those ties, because it had been super tiring than the previous year to get to that title, and putting on these other best of 5 matches into their season. And so a change was needed, in my opinion. Right now we have other kind of issues, and I think that it's obvious. And I miss the atmosphere about the home and the away ties. I don't know. Probably, the most sustainable thing can be trying to take a little step back, but maybe trying to have a format which can last, for example, a couple of years. Can be good things, but then I think that's an even better opinion, maybe expressed by someone who is into this organization stuff and all these things. Yeah, I think that's the main issue of this Davis Cup is, I think, when there's not a home team involved in a tie, can be can things become really, really difficult, even because there is not a long a long-term organization, because it depends on the results, it depends on the calendar. You are not sure if a player is going or not, because you always know that an injury can come, and all these things. It's not that easy, especially because fans from some country have to travel a very long way to get to where the Davis Cup is held. And so, yeah, probably I would like, in terms of my personal opinion of how I enjoyed this competition, probably I would like to see, a new format, a couple of years with, again, the home and away ties, which can be, can bring a lot of good energy. But for example, coming back to a best of 5 format, I don't think so, because it would become really, really unsustainable for the players.
Tony, what do you think are the major benefits and setbacks of this new Davis Cup format?
Yeah, like I think Mario mentioned all the right thing about what was different, what was good. Any change brings some friction, and change can be good. By the way, I design software and you design beautiful, and then people complain. So they're like, "Where is my button?" So people, I think there are good things about. I think Novak speaks really eloquently about this from the perspective: what was the improvement? What was the things that it's better? I think the biggest challenge for me is that you had this opportunity to watch Serbian players playing in Serbia at least once a year, or and I do believe that Serbia last time played in Serbia Davis Cup match way before. So it does there is an issue in Split that we know that there was an empty seats for different reasons. So one thing that they need to definitely improve is to find a way to resolve those logistical issues that Mario was talking about. Fans need to travel a long time. We lost a little bit of this crazy, fans bringing almost like a football or soccer atmosphere to it. And with this new format, I didn't see a lot of it. We all remember how, again, I'm not going to pull out Yugoslavia against France back in 70s when Yannick Noah played with Leconte against Živinović, and when it was crazy in Belgrade. So we missed this kind of with the new format, but there's some good stuff and improvements. And I think the good news is they recognize that they're going to make some adjustments and they're going to make this better. That's my feel about it.
Do you think that there is a future where Davis Cup will be held not every single year, but it will take a format of a basically World Cup, FIFA World Cup? So maybe not every 4 years, but let's say every 2 years.
There have been some discussion about that. I'm not engaged, and I don't have even sufficient knowledge about the topics because I don't see the media ratings. I don't see some other things. I think it's possible. I think it's been discussed before. The change was necessary. The changes was needed, and I think they're learning. They are learning right now, making adjustments, and they're gonna make some improvements accordingly. But going back to your questions, yes, I do believe there is a possibility that this will. Everything for me is a mental model. For you, World Cup is 4 years, European is 2 years. This one is 1 year. So I think there is a possibility there will be qualifications, there will be things,
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
but it will kind of culminate into the Final Four in basketball, European basketball, and then European Davis Cup final, 26, 28, 30, something like that. So I do believe there is a possibility that there will be one event every 2 years, which is kind of a pivotal moment of this, but the rest of it may be qualifications, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was
I
thinking.
believe, in my opinion, things that I think that I don't particularly like is the fact that it's the feeling is not that special as a World Cup, because there's always the way of thinking that, okay, it's not this year, maybe next year, maybe in 2 years I have a lot of chance, lots of opportunities. Probably that that feeling of the special occasion, which comes very, very few times in your career, even for the big countries of tennis, can in my opinion bring even more excitement for the occasion. I don't want to compare to the Olympics, because the Olympics is the best thing possible when it comes to sport and nationality, but trying to do some kind of that stuff, trying to even if tennis is different, to do a little bit like other sports, to make representing the national team even more of a pride in that competition.
Yeah. Do you guys think that it would actually kind of incentivize big players to play regularly as opposed to the current format?
It's a difficult point, because, for example, I don't really like the for, let's say, for example, the idea of let's say the ranking points. Totally, it's a big no, in my opinion, because it brings in a personal reason and advantage that I don't like in this national team competitions. What it can be, I don't know. In my opinion, the only way to make this even more special is making the occasion count more for a player's career. When you have 5-6 chances in your career to try to win that Davis Cup title for your country, you have to try harder, and also the spot in the calendar. It is also super important, because let's talk about in Italy. There's been a lot of talk about Yannick Sinner not playing the qualifiers of the Davis Cup, and same happened to Carlos Alcaraz for Spain. And the spot in the calendar, it's also an important thing, because it's of course shout out to Novak for going there 2 days after winning the US Open title. But let's admit that it's super difficult for the players, being in the US Open final on the Sunday, and then on the Tuesday be there for for the Davis Cup in another continent. This is really difficult, and the same is, for example, in WTA for the WTA finals and the Billie Jean King Cup finals. The WTA finals in last years have been in America, North America, in Mexico, and the following week there was the Billie Jean King Cup final in Europe, and it becomes super difficult for the top players, physically and mentally.
Yeah, Tony, I wanted to ask you about Serbian Davis Cup history. Can we consider it a failure, especially in this Novak Djokovic era, considering the fact that we only won one in the span of almost 20 years? And should we consider it a failure?
It's a difficult question.
I know.
Because as Mario was saying, there is an issue of a calendar. I remember when Novak came from US Open, played against Del Potro, and got injured for not 2 months. So the big issue is the calendar, which was preventing Novak from playing. He's an incredible athlete. He is always putting Serbian Davis Cup team in front of everything else. He played this year 2 days after winning US Open, or 3 days, whatever. He traveled there after coming to a balcony here in Belgrade. But technically speaking, yes, you can make a point that Serbia could have won more. But in the same time, I think in an old format, it was almost like winning a championship league in a way in football. You have those great teams who never won a championship league. I tell you, Manchester City waiting like 10 years to win one championship league. So you can have some parallel with this. So I think one is great. It changed the Novak for the better. Other teams showed more passion in other seasons, and that's a beauty actually of a Davis Cup, I believe. The way the Grand Slam were dominated by 3 players, this one was an opportunity for other countries. From a Serbian perspective, I think one is great. We'll see if this year will bring another one. I think so, but it's too early to tell. But I wouldn't consider it a failure. Maybe underachieving. Considering we had a Tipsarevic, we had Troitsky, we had Milinović, we had a Lajovic, we had a Zimonjić. Yes, I'm old enough to remember when I believe it was the 78, Zimonjić was number 1, Jelena Janković was number 1, and Novak was close to number 1, but winning some. So from that perspective, yes, you can say we did not achieve as many as we would like to, but I wouldn't call it a failure.
By the way, that 2013 finals loss against Czech Republic in Belgrade still haunts me. I mean, they were basically playing 2 guys, Radic Stefanek and Tomasz Berdy, and that was it.
True.
And also that semis lost to Croatia in 2021. I was actually expecting us to win that year, and it would be such a cherry on top on Novak's amazing calendar year that he had. But yeah, hopefully this year. And speaking of this year, who is your favorite to win? Or who should be considered a favorite? Yeah, for Davis Cup in Malaga.
Mario can go first.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that considering the level and the deep, how deep the team is in singles, the great doubles team they have. I think that, in my opinion, the Great Britain is looking the strongest team right now among the 8. That's my personal opinion. Then I think that Serbia has, of course, a great chance, because if Novak comes into great shape, he has a good chance of winning his matches and bringing 1 out of the 2 points the country needs to qualify. Also the singles players this year are doing quite well, because Jere has played a very solid year, even if the conditions probably don't suit him really well, but we have seen that he can play solid in his singles match. Probably the doubles needs to be fixed a little bit. But the chance is there when you have Djokovic in your team. And I would say that the third one, I would mention probably Italy, because of all the top level singles players they have. But it depends if they will all be there. I'm thinking that, considering both the level of the singles players and the doubles team, I think that in my eyes, the Great Britain is looking the strongest one, because if they go with Cameron Norrie, Daniel Evans, but also there is Andy Murray with his experience, Jack Draper with his a breath of fresh air, and the doubles team with Skupski and Evans. If Evans plays like he played, for example, in the doubles 2 weeks ago, I feel that it is a very, very deep team with great chances. So that's my take about that. But I would mention also the Serbian and the Italian team as two teams that can raise to the occasion.
Yeah. So Tony, based on Mario's expectation, we actually got the toughest possible draw for the quarterfinals. So,
and I would agree. I would agree. Sorry, by the way, I had a little interruption here in my little studio. My mother came to. So yes, I would agree. The toughest draw. Britain brings some kind of experience, passion, and I think they're also motivated. Like you can see with the teams, their specific season with certain teams, you can see it's not in them to put this energy that you need to have for winning a Davis Cup. So I would agree with Mario with his observation, and we're in a tougher part of a draw. And I would pick up, if not Serbia, I would pick up Great Britain.
How much do you think it would mean for Andy Murray? Because we know what he's been going through in the last couple of years, and we've seen the kind of passion that he plays when he represents his country at that Davis Cup.
I think it would be a miracle for him. I talked with a lot of people in the tournaments when he went through the surgery, and everybody told me he's never coming back, not even close, that he's wasting his time. I've heard this from tournament presidents, from an experts. So going back to your question, I think it's an incredible athlete, which is bringing incredible energy and passion. And for Murray, would be huge. It would be huge. His legacy, considering he lost how many finals in Australia alone against Novak? 6, 5?
Yeah, something like that.
5 and 4 against Novak.
Yeah, 5. So I think he's building his legacy on 2 Olympic gold medals. Correct me if I'm wrong. And,
no, it's true, which is amazing.
And I actually been at the U.S. Open when he won a Grand Slam and completely lost it behind the cameras. Even Lendl was in the box at the time. So yes, I think he's bringing a lot of passion, a lot of experience, a lot of energy. You need to have this driving force in a team. Like Novak, you remember when last year we lost? It looked like he was the only one bringing this crazy energy in our Davis Cup team. So I think Murray has this role that Novak sometimes have in the Davis Cup for Serbia.
Yeah, I agree with. Unfortunately, it looks like almost impossible to have a match between Djokovic and Murray in the Davis Cup finals, because he should put out of the tie both Norrie and Evans, and I think it's basically impossible. Especially seems like even if Norrie is the highest ranked player, seems like it's difficult to say no to Evans for the energy he brings to the team, and also because I see in his game something that can bring issues to Novak, at least tactically. Even if Novak should win, that we remember Monte Carlo, but Monte Carlo is kind of another, in my opinion, another kind of speech. But still, there is something that can bother him a little bit. So I think that for the nostalgic tennis fans, it looks like impossible to have that match between in Malaga between Djokovic and Murray. But I still would think that even if not as the number one character as he was in 2015, still would be something amazing, because when you are putting all this physical and mental energy to be back, despite, I don't want to say no reason, but you would ask why you have won all these 3 Grand Slams and these Olympic golds, you have won the Davis Cup, you have been on the top 2, 3, 4 of the game for all those years. Why you are accepting to come back, even if if it's impossible to play like you were doing before? And it takes a lot of passion, a lot of sacrifice, and it's, of course, it would be super, super great and emotional. And also I think that he belongs very, very well with the team. And I like these things about both Murray and Djokovic, which basically they feel like they belong to this generation, because they wanted to belong to, even if they are a little bit old in terms of the tennis career. But I admire the willingness and stay closer to the next generation, and they are both exemplary in that.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, guys, before we wrap this up, I wanted to hear your thoughts and your takes on the Laver Cup. As we could have seen, it's been kind of disaster this year, because no higher ranking player were participating, especially for Team Europe. No Novak, Alcaraz, Medvedev. And what do you basically think, Tony? Have you ever attended a Laver Cup? No.
And not a big fan of this type of format. I think it's almost an opportunity for Federer to display all the products. He's receiving those huge endorsements from Uniqlo too. But I respect the tournament. It has a nice concept, nice idea. John McEnroe is involved, so it can be wrong. But I do believe it did not live to expectations, and pretty high expectation of this tournament in general.
Mario, what do you think the future looks like for a Laver Cup? And does it have a future, actually?
I'm a non-conventional tennis fan. In fact, this year I'm enjoying it more than previous years, because I prefer the competition when there is not a super character which takes all the attention away from the others. But it's my personal taste. I have to say that a great difficulty this competition is going to face this year and also the next year is that it started with a great tradition in having these big characters involved. 2017 and 2019, Federer, Nadal in the teams. 2018, there was Federer, there was Djokovic. 2022, let's not even talk about that, because of all what was about Federer's retirement, and with all the big four of this area of tennis involved, which was an incredible occasion. And you like or not the format, the competition, the concept, but you watched it because having the big four training, for example, all them in the same court, it's just that an amazing thing for the tennis fans. And of course, for speaking not for myself but in general, of course this year is way more difficult, even because, for example, we have Team Europe against Team World, but then again from the rest of the world, it's there's not much variety in terms of the nationalities of the players involved, because the United States are have a heavy presence in the competition, also because most of the higher ranked players regarding the non-European countries comes from the United States. So there are a lot of things. I've never been a great fan of the event, but at the same time, I'm not the one which is super criticizing it, because I can also understand. For example, I was since I have a great connection with the Argentinian tennis, I was bringing putting myself in the shoes of a player like, Francisco Cerundolo, which, 3 years ago was having university exams and playing in challengers, not even winning them until 3 years ago. And right now he is sitting next to John McEnroe, getting high five from him. This kind of thing is, nice also because the players can interact each other. There are other things I don't like. For example, the invitational stuff. I prefer a more, you are the best players. You have the right to come here. And then if you don't want to come, we'll go back to less deserving, let's say this, in terms of the results, players. And also the fact that you not really understand if it's an exhibition or not. For example, I think that the controversy with Auger Aliassime and Monfils was pretty much it was important because there is an issue about that, in my opinion. You not really get into it's an exhibition or not, or this kind of things. By the way, one thing is certain from me: it should not count in stats, and had to add, because why challenger when they are playing for prize money, for ranking points, for success, don't count for the ATP website, but Laver Cup, yes. I don't like it.
Yeah, Tony, let me ask you this. What Mario started to talk about, then we'll wrap it up. Why do you think the ATP made a decision to count the head-to-heads at Laver Cup as the official victories or losses?
I think they did for the same reason that Mario was explaining, is to bring a little bit more competitiveness into it and meaning into it, and kind of a value in to go from exhibition into there is also a component of competing. So from that perspective, I do believe, again, it's a new type of thing, new format. It combines the different experiences we have from a Grand Slam, from a Davis Cup, from ATP tournaments. It does have this nice Europe, North America feel to it. I'm not complaining about it. It's just that it didn't. I'm talking about from the perspective of a sports consumer or tennis, somebody who is watching. It didn't just engage me in a way that other tournaments were able to do that.
I would like to have women too, if I have to be honest. I would like a mixed, two mixed team. I would prefer having both men and women involved. If I have to make a suggestion,
that's a good idea. Yeah.
If I have to make a suggestion about the future, that's what I would like to.
Yeah. Okay. Before we wrap this up, I just wanted to tell you guys that our new blog is finally ready. It'll be published on Tuesday, so make sure to check out and follow our social media for more updates, as well as other content that we have over there. That would be it for today's episode. I honestly hope you guys liked it and enjoyed it. Tony, I want to thank you so much for joining me, and Mario. I hope that you also had a good time with us today.
Absolutely. First of all, it's an honor to be. I follow you, Marko and Mario, and I think you're doing an incredible job. And I'm really honored to be part of this show. And I see exactly where you guys are going with this. I like the direction. I would like to support this as much as I can with my limited capacity in the media. But kudos to you. It's incredible discussion with people which I consider more knowledgeable than myself. Even in the tennis, and it was a great honor to be with you guys today.
Thank you so much for those kind words, Tony. Mario, buddy, as for you, I'll see you next week in the next episode.
Yeah, thank you to both, and thank you, Tony, for kind words. It's for me an honor to be with you and with right here. For me, it's always great to talk about tennis, and you have been amazing here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys again. I'm going to be following you in the future and looking forward to the great stuff that will come out of what you guys are doing.
Thanks a lot, Tony. So guys, please don't forget to check Novak Books. So it's either novakbooks.com or at novakdjokovicfoundation.org. You can find and hopefully buy your copies. So that would be it all for today from me. Goodbye, NoleFam, and idem.
Thank you.